A letter with no name, a truth with no voice in the world of finance, where numbers rule and image matters. It's easy for the truth to get buried under performance charts and polished smiles, but sometimes the loudest truths arrive in the quietest ways. That's exactly what happened when a single, anonymous letter reached the desk of Elaine Mercer, CEO of Horizon National Bank. No signature, no details, just one chilling sentence: "Something is very wrong here. Please help before someone breaks." Elaine didn't ignore it. She didn't delegate it. Instead, she did what no one expected a CEO to do. She put on a disguise, stepped out of her high-rise office, and walked directly into the unknown, into one of her own branches. What she discovered inside would shake the foundation of her institution and reveal that even in a world obsessed with profit, humanity must come first. This is the story of what happened when an undercover CEO walked into her own branch and stopped cold when she heard a teller in tears. The hidden message that sparked a mission: Elaine Mercer wasn't a typical bank CEO. While others measured success in percentages and projections, she trusted her instinct, especially when something didn't feel right. It started with a single envelope, no name, no return address, just a short hand-scrawled note clipped to the front of an anonymous employee satisfaction survey. "Something is very wrong here. Please help before someone breaks." It arrived on her desk amid stacks of market reports and expansion proposals. Elaine could have ignored it. Most CEO probably would, but she didn't become one of the youngest leaders in the financial world by overlooking the quiet details. If anything, her rise was built on listening to what wasn't being said. The branch in question was in Brook Hollow, a seemingly pristine location known for high profits and perfect metrics. There had never been a formal complaint. No staff turnover in over a year, no red flags. On paper, the place was flawless, which made the letter all the more chilling. Elaine called in her assistant and quietly pulled internal data. The numbers were clean, but perhaps too clean. Too perfect, too polished, and if someone had felt compelled to reach out directly, it meant something deeper was hiding beneath the surface. She didn't alert the regional director. She didn't notify the branch. Instead, she packed a small canvas tote, slipped on a brunette wig, and chose her plainest coat. No driver, no security, just Elaine and the quiet determination that had guided her since her first days as a teller herself. If there was something wrong inside that branch, she would see it with her own eyes. A disguise, a mission, and a familiar lobby. Elaine Mercer stepped into the lobby of the Brookhollow branch as if she were just another face in the morning crowd. She wore a look of mild confusion, her eyes darting from the digital displays to the sleek counters, mimicking the nervous energy of someone unfamiliar with banking procedures. No one looked twice at her. That was the goal. To them, she was just another middle-aged woman with a tote bag and hesitant footsteps. The lobby was bright, immaculate, and eerily calm. An upbeat tune played softly overhead, and the teller windows buzzed with transactional efficiency. A receptionist glanced up and offered a rehearsed smile. "Good morning, welcome to Horizon National. Can I help you today?" Elaine shook her head politely and wandered further into the branch. Her role was simple: observe, absorb, and listen. As she took a seat near the brochure rack, she let her eyes drift. Behind the glass offices and smiles, she looked for the subtle tells: nervous glances, whispered tones, or the robotic cheerfulness that masked fear. It wasn't obvious at first, but there was a strange tension beneath the surface. Employees moved quickly, too quickly. Smiles didn't reach their eyes. Conversations were clipped. Laughter was missing. It was a familiar scene for Elaine, one she remembered from her early days, working under a manager who ruled with pressure instead of praise. That invisible grip was hard to name, but you could feel it in the air. And then she heard it, a soft, nearly imperceptible sound, muffled, hidden, a sob, the kind that wasn't meant to be heard. Elaine froze. Somewhere behind the staff doors, someone was breaking, and in that moment she knew the letter hadn't been an exaggeration. It was a warning, and she had just walked into the heart of it. Behind the door, the cry that broke the silence. Elaine stood perfectly still, the muted sob still echoing in her ears like a haunting melody. Most customers wouldn't have noticed it. It was the kind of cry trained ears could catch only if they were truly listening, low, strained, and stifled behind professionalism, but to Elaine it was as clear as a fire alarm. She slowly pivoted toward the sound, following it through the pristine corridor until she reached a door marked staff only teller access. She didn't knock, she didn't announce herself. She only placed a hand lightly on the door and pushed it just enough to leave a sliver open. What she saw on the other side made her chest tighten. A young woman, no older than 25, sat hunched at the corner of a break table. Her shoulders quaked with each silent sob, and a crumpled tissue was clenched in her trembling hands. Her name tag was slightly askew on her blouse. Sasha. Elaine didn't need to see more. She had seen that posture before, years ago when she had worked her way through the ranks. The silent tears of someone trying not to break under pressure. The type of exhaustion that wasn't about workload, but the weight of unspoken torment. And then, like a whip crack, came a voice that sliced through the tension, crying again, "Sasha, this is why nobody wants to partner with you on counts. You're always one mistake away from costing this branch another audit." Elaine flinched. The tone was razor, sharp, dripping with disgust. A man's voice, controlled but layered with cruel familiarity. "I'm not covering for you again. You mess up the cash drawer one more time and you can cry your way to a pink slip." It wasn't firm management. It was deliberate humiliation. Elaine's hand tightened on the doorknob. She took a slow breath, steadying herself, then eased the door shut just enough so she wouldn't be noticed. She wasn't ready to reveal her identity, not yet. She needed to know who that voice belonged to. She needed to understand how deep the rot ran, but inside her something had already shifted. That single sob had revealed more truth than all the spreadsheets and surface-level reviews ever had. This wasn't just a management issue, it was a human one, the snake with a smile. Hallstrom revealed returning to the front of the bank. Elaine approached the front desk again, this time with purpose. "Excuse me," she said in her softest voice. "Is the branch manager in today? I had a question about setting up a business account." The receptionist brightened but faltered for just a second before responding. "Yes, Mr. Hallstrom is in, but he's currently in a meeting. I can set an appointment if you'd like." Elaine smiled politely. "No need, I'll wait." As she returned to her seat, her mind processed the name. Hallstrom, the same name she had read dozens of times in glowing reports. Award, winning, efficient, highly rated in all internal assessments. On paper, a model manager, but that was the trick with paper, it could be manipulated. It didn't record the raised voices behind closed doors, the looks of fear exchanged between co-workers, or the moments that broke people silently. Elaine turned her focus to the tellers again. One by one, she watched their faces. There was Devon, neatly dressed, confident on the outside, but his eyes flicked nervously toward the back room every few minutes. An older teller named Brenda stood stiffly at her station, her smile wide but her fingers constantly twitching with her pen. A few others moved like shadows, quick, quiet, expressionless. A culture of fear had woven its roots deep. That wasn't just the result of a bad day, it was systematic. Suddenly, the breakroom door opened and he walked out. Hallstrom, tall, composed, and immaculately dressed. He wore his suit like armor, dark gray with a deep navy tie, a pin bearing the bank's crest on his lapel. His face was calm, almost charming, as he gave a nod to the receptionist and passed the tellers like a benevolent king. But Elaine noticed everything, the way Sasha shrank slightly as he passed, the way Devon's hands froze for a fraction of a second. The way not one staff member made eye contact. He was a tyrant cloaked in corporate etiquette. Hallstrom disappeared into his glass, walled office, and Elaine watched him close the blinds as if needing to shield whatever came next. She leaned back in her chair and felt a chill settle in her bones. The man she'd just seen scold a crying teller in private had returned to public view like nothing happened. But soon he would learn that not every face in the lobby was just a customer. And not every woman in a canvas tote and trench coat was ordinary. Silent clues and nervous smiles, Elaine decided to stay in the lobby a little longer, long enough to observe the rhythm of the branch. It was clear to her now, fear didn't always scream it whispered. And right now, it was whispering in the way employees glanced at each other, second, guessed their words, and pretended too hard to be okay. She approached the service counter where a teller named Devon stood, mid-20s, well groomed and visibly professional, but there was something about his posture, too rigid, too controlled. "Hi there," she said with a polite smile. "I'm interested in setting up a joint account. Can you help?" Devon smiled automatically. "Of course, ma'am. I can walk you through the options." His voice was calm, but Elaine noticed how his hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure, as if worried about a mistake that might cost him more than just embarrassment. She leaned in gently. "You've been working here long?" she asked casually, keeping her tone light. About 9 months now," he replied, eyes darting briefly to the hallway. "It's a good place." "Good." The pause was long enough to betray the truth behind the word. Elaine gave him a reassuring nod. "Seems like a tight ship." He didn't answer. Instead, his smile returned, mechanical, hollow. He handed her a brochure and excused himself to double-check a form. But she noticed the subtle release of breath when he stepped away, like someone who just narrowly avoided saying the wrong thing. As she returned to her seat, she observed more signs. Brenda, the senior teller, looked like she was carrying years of stress on her shoulders. Her customer interaction was flawless, but robotic, like she was operating from muscle memory instead of connection. Elaine's heart sank. The branch wasn't just dealing with one toxic manager. It had internalized survival. The staff had grown so accustomed to fear they didn't even know how to speak freely anymore. They weren't working. They were enduring. And whatever Hallstrom had done to build this facade of perfection, it had left his team emotionally starved, anxious, and isolated. This wasn't just a toxic environment. It was a quiet hostage situation wrapped in company branding. The smile that didn't reach the eyes the receptionist at the front desk had the warmest smile in the room, but to Elaine it was also the most practiced. After her encounter with Devon, Elaine casually approached the desk again. "I was just curious." She began lightly. "Do you all have team events here? It seems like a well-run branch." The receptionist hesitated, a second, maybe two, then smiled wider. "Oh yes, we have luncheons sometimes. Last one was a few months ago." "A few months ago?" Elaine tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "That's quite a gap." "Well, Mr. Hallstrom prefers we stay focused during working hours," the receptionist said quickly, her smile stiffening. He witnessed to the breaking point the next morning. Elaine returned, not in disguise, but still incognito, same trench coat, same canvas tote, same quiet presence among unsuspecting staff. But this time she wasn't there to observe, she was there to confirm. She arrived early and took a seat near the hallway that led to the break room. It was a quiet corner, usually ignored by the regular foot traffic. She waited. At 10:47 a.m. it happened. The break room door burst open and Sasha stumbled out, tears already clinging to her lashes. Behind her, storming out like a thundercloud in human form, was Hallstrom. His voice was sharp, laced with venom. "I told you this would be your last mistake." The deposit forms were incomplete again. "And if I have to clean up another one of your disasters," Elaine stood. Hallstrom grabbed Sasha's arm, not violently, but firmly enough to cause visible discomfort, and began steering her back toward the staff corridor. That was the moment Elaine moved in, not as a customer, not as a bystander, but as the woman who had built the empire this man was poisoning from the inside. The reveal that shattered the illusion. Elaine's footsteps echoed with calm authority as she approached. "Is that how you train your team, Mr. Hallstrom?" she said evenly, her voice cutting through the hallway like a scalpel. Hallstrom stopped mid-step. Sasha froze. He turned slowly, confusion flashing across his face, until he looked closely at the woman before him. His eyes widened. The color drained from his face. Elaine reached up, removed her wig, and let her natural curls fall. She straightened her coat collar, revealing the Silver Horizon national pin gleaming just beneath it. The silence was deafening. "MS. Mercer?" Hallstrom stammered, suddenly fumbling with his tone. "I didn't realize. You weren't scheduled to visit." "I don't need to be scheduled to walk into my own branch," she replied coldly. Then she turned to Sasha. "Are you okay?" Sasha, barely able to speak, nodded. Hallstrom attempted damage control. There's been a misunderstanding. Elaine cut him off with a raised hand. The only misunderstanding here is how long you thought you could get away with this. The illusion was shattered. The reckoning behind glass walls. The moment Elaine exposed her identity, the entire branch seemed to freeze. Whispers fluttered like leaves in a sudden wind. Employees looked at each other in disbelief, half in shock, half in relief. Hallstrom, once the untouchable tyrant of the office, now stood powerless beneath the weight of truth. Elaine didn't yell. She didn't raise her voice or make a scene. She simply turned and said, "I want the staff gathered in the meeting room." Now the branch obeyed. Inside that glass-walled room where Hallstrom once handed out orders and intimidation like business cards, Elaine addressed the staff as their CEO, not with arrogance, but with clarity and purpose. "I'm here today because someone among you had the courage to speak out." She began, her eyes scanning the room, and what I've seen confirms what was written in that letter. This branch is profitable, yes, but not at the expense of people's dignity. That ends today. The staff exchanged glances. Some nodded, others choked back tears. Sasha remained silent, but sat straighter than she had all morning. Elaine turned to Hallstrom one last time. "You're relieved of your duties." "Effective immediately. Security will escort you off the premises after you've cleared your office." He didn't protest. He knew better. His reign had ended, not with a scandal, but with a quiet, powerful reckoning. From ashes to integrity, a new beginning. The days that followed were not easy, but they were healing. Elaine personally oversaw the internal investigation into the branch's management practices. Hallstrom was later found to have manipulated internal performance reviews, bullied team members into silence, and even discouraged promotions to retain control over weaker staff. He was blacklisted from banking sector and faced legal consequences for workplace harassment. But more importantly, the people he had hurt were heard. Sasha was offered counseling and placed into a leadership development program, a role she had secretly dreamed of but never dared pursue under Hallstrom's shadow. Devin came forward to admit he had written the anonymous letter. Instead of punishing him, Elaine thanked him in front of the entire regional team. In the following months, a new branch manager was appointed, one known not for power but for empathy. Team building sessions were restored. Performance was still measured, but now through collaboration, not coercion. And Elaine, she didn't stop at Bruccolo. She visited 7 more branches that year, undercover, unannounced, unguarded, because she had learned something irreplaceable in that quiet room behind the teller line. The strength of a company isn't measured in quarterly reports. It's measured in the silence between sobs, in the weight of a glance, and in the courage of one voice daring to say, "Please help." And when that voice is finally heard, everything changes. The sound that saved a branch. The story began with a cry behind a door. A fragile, nearly silent sob that spoke louder than any formal complaint ever could, and it ended not with scandal but with transformation. Elaine Mercer didn't just expose a toxic manager, she reignited a culture of integrity. She reminded every employee, from teller to executive, that silence does not equal safety, and fear has no place in any workplace, no matter how successful it seems on the outside. The Bruccolo branch is now thriving, not just in revenue but in morale. Sasha is leading training sessions for new hires. Devin's courage set off a wave of change across the company. And Hallstrom's shadow no longer hangs over anyone's head. But most of all, the story became a quiet legend inside Horizon National. Reminder that leadership isn't just about profits or policies. Sometimes it's about listening to the whispers behind closed doors and answering them with action. Because real leadership doesn't sit in a boardroom. It walks into the room no one else dares to enter.